Beneath the shifting silt of the Iraqi desert, within the silent, collapsed libraries of empires that vanished 5 millennia ago, lies a narrative that the modern world is only beginning to decode. Archaeologists have retrieved thousands of clay tablets from the ruins of Nineveh and Ur, most containing the mundane accounting of an early civilization. Yet hidden within the rarely translated fragments of esoteric temple lore, scholars have identified a series of accounts that describe an intervention in the human story. These texts do not depict a wild animal wandering into a campfire. Instead, they detail the arrival of an entity described as a mirror of the soul, a species possessing the capability to mimic human social structures and infiltrate our environments. This narrative, encoded into the clay by ancient architects, suggests we are living alongside a presence deliberately integrated into society to serve as a silent, unwavering witness. They are here now because they were assigned to be. The foundation of this claim rests in the physical records left by the Sumerians. Observe the structure of this tablet, organized into a precise grid of cuneiform script. While standard administrative tablets use a flowing script, these specific temple fragments utilize a rigid, compartmentalized layout, a format reserved for technical specifications and divine instructions. Linguistic experts deciphering these panels have identified a recurring motif: the description of a watcher sent to Earth to exist in a state of constant proximity to the human species. The text describes this entity as having a primary directive, an instruction to blend into human society so flawlessly that its true nature remains obscured. According to these ancient records, this species was gifted with a unique cognitive resonance, allowing it to hide in plain sight by appearing to be a simple companion while functioning as a sophisticated monitor of human development and spiritual integrity. Modern evolutionary science provides a purely biological explanation for this proximity. Scientists point to the Pleistocene epoch, roughly 30,000 years ago, suggesting docile wolves began scavenging the refuse of human camps. Over hundreds of generations, these village wolves supposedly traded their predatory independence for the safety of a steady food supply, eventually evolving into the domestic dogs we know today. However, esoteric lore from the Enuma Elish and other Babylonian creation myths presents a divergent origin story. These texts describe the creation of celestial hounds, forged not from biological evolution, but instead from a highly specific decree of the higher powers to stand at the thresholds of the physical world. In this ancient framework, the canine is an off-world arrival, a presence intentionally placed here at the dawn of the human experiment to ensure the safety of the soul as it navigates the dangers of a physical incarnation. This tension between the slow grind of natural selection and the sudden, purposeful appearance described in ancient texts creates the central mystery of our investigation. If the Sumerian records are accurate, if this species was placed here with a specific intent rather than emerging through blind environmental pressure, we must confront the question of their purpose. Why would a developing civilization require a permanent, silent observer? Why was the canine chosen to be the one entity capable of traversing the boundary between our world and the unseen realms? A deployment of this magnitude, maintained for tens of thousands of years, suggests that humanity is under a form of spiritual guardianship that we have long since forgotten, yet which continues to function in every home on the planet. In order to uncover the absolute reality of this assignment, we must look past the modern concept of the household pet. For the civilizations that laid the groundwork for our own, the canine was categorized as active spiritual technology. They were precision instruments utilized to manage the invisible energies that the ancients believed governed health, destiny, and the afterlife. When we examine the archaeological evidence, we find a consistent pattern of behavior across the most advanced empires of the Old World. From the healing temples of Mesopotamia to the gilded tombs of Egypt, the canine was treated as a vital component of human survival, a celestial guardian stationed in the physical world to protect a species that was otherwise entirely defenseless against the forces of the unseen. To find the physical proof of this celestial assignment, we must peel back the layers of dust that have settled over the Mesopotamian plains. Ancient Mesopotamia was not a collection of primitive tribes, but a highly sophisticated network of city-states that possessed a lost understanding of the relationship between biology and energy. When archaeologists excavated these sites, they uncovered evidence of an architectural and social structure that was meticulously designed to facilitate a specific type of interaction between humans and canines. These ruins are the remains of a society that operated on the belief that the physical body was only one aspect of a larger energetic system, a system that required constant maintenance and protection. This maintenance was overseen by Gula, the Mesopotamian goddess of healing and restoration. She was the absolute authority on the science of life, and her influence was felt in every major city, from Nippur to Babylon. Statues of Gula, like this one, with her raised hands in a gesture of divine blessing, are found throughout the excavation sites. But Gula's power was not purely symbolic. Her temples functioned as massive medical and spiritual research centers, where the boundary between physical medicine and esoteric energy work was non-existent. In these sacred complexes, the primary agents of her healing power were not human doctors, but the canine guardians that were kept and trained within her walls. The scale of this operation was immense. Within the shadow of the great ziggurat of Ur, temple administrators maintained rigorous accounting of the dogs dedicated to Gula. These were not casual records. They were institutional ledgers that documented the lineages, diets, and specific energetic duties of the temple hounds. The archaeological find of these records proves that the ancient state dedicated significant resources to the preservation and breeding of these animals. They were a pillar of the Mesopotamian social order, categorized alongside priests and high officials as essential workers in the maintenance of the city's spiritual and physical health. Temple administrators categorized these canines as active medical technology, a classification distinct from the household animals common in residential districts. This stone carving, densely inscribed with cuneiform, serves as a physical example of this belief. The inscriptions are not decorative, they are specific incantations and diagnostic records. The Mesopotamians operated on the understanding that the canine sensory system could detect the presence of disease, energetic imbalances, and even psychological distress long before they manifested in the physical human body. They utilized the dog's natural sensitivity as a biological early warning system, deploying them in healing wards to identify the root causes of suffering that were invisible to the human eye. The priests of Gula believed that these dogs performed a function far more complex than simple diagnosis. They viewed the canine as an energetic filter, capable of drawing sickness and malevolent forces out of a human being and neutralizing them. This artifact features a hollow vessel carved directly into the dog's back, designed to hold ritual offerings of oils, herbs, and prayers. Patients seeking healing would make these offerings as a form of energetic exchange, believing that the dog would literally consume the negativity or disease that plagued them. The canine was a living sacrificial filter, standing between the human and the forces of decay. This documented role as a biological and spiritual filter marks the first layer of their divine assignment. The Mesopotamian evidence suggests that the dog's primary duty on Earth was the protection of the human vessel. But the ancients understood that the physical body was merely a temporary house. They knew that the greatest danger a human being would ever face did not occur during life, but at the moment of its conclusion. The Mesopotamians utilized dogs as guardians of the flesh, but their neighboring civilizations discovered a far more critical jurisdiction. As we move across the ancient world, the records reveal a terrifying truth. The dog's true power is only fully realized once a human heart stops beating. At that moment, the guardian transitions from a healer into a guide through the most dangerous territory in existence. Ancient Egypt was a civilization built upon the architecture of the afterlife. They believed that the physical world was a mere shadow compared to the vast, complex, and perilous landscape that awaited the soul after death. To the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a dangerous journey through the Duat, an underworld filled with gatekeepers, terrifying monstrous entities and tests of the spirit. They mapped this territory with obsessive detail, leaving behind funerary texts that served as a survival guide for the deceased. In this landscape of absolute spiritual peril, the soul was considered completely defenseless, unless it was accompanied by a specific assigned protector. This protector was Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead. Out of all the animals in the Egyptian world, the canine was chosen to hold the keys to the afterlife. This black and gold statue, found in royal tombs, depicts Anubis in a state of eternal vigilance. The Egyptian priesthood observed the wild jackals patrolling the edges of the desert and the burial grounds at night, concluding that these animals possessed a natural affinity for the boundaries between worlds. They saw the canine as the only creature capable of standing guard at the threshold where the physical world dissolves into the spiritual, choosing the dog to be the ultimate sovereign of the necropolis. The Book of the Dead describes the canine as a psychopomp, a specialized entity capable of traversing the dimensions of the living and the dead with ease. The text insists that the canine possesses a form of spiritual sight that allows it to navigate the dark, winding paths of the underworld that are invisible to the disoriented human soul. For the Egyptians, the dog was the essential companion for the crossing. Without a canine to lead the way and fend off the predatory spirits of the duat, the human soul would be consumed by the shadows long before it ever reached the halls of judgment. The most critical moment in this journey was the weighing of the heart. This papyrus illustration depicts the final trial, where the soul's worth is measured against the feather of truth. Notice the figure kneeling at the base of the scales. It is Anubis, the divine canine, who physically manages the mechanism of judgment. He is the one who adjusts the weights and ensures the process is conducted with absolute fairness. In this esoteric framework, the dog is not just a guide. He is the guardian of cosmic order, the one who determines whether a human soul is permitted to pass into the fields of eternity or is destined for eradication. The logic behind this assignment is rooted in the canine's unique sensory capability. The Egyptians believed that dogs could perceive malevolent spirits that were entirely invisible to human eyes. To the right of the scales sits Ammit, the devourer of souls, waiting to consume those who fail the trial. The presence of the canine guardian was the only thing that could steady the human spirit in the face of such absolute horror. The dog's role was to provide the courage and the sight that humans lack when confronted with the raw forces of the spiritual world. The Egyptian state instituted the elaborate, expensive mummification of actual dogs to ensure this protection continued beyond the grave. They did not view this as a symbolic act, but as a practical necessity. By preserving the physical form of the dog and placing it in the tomb, they believed they were creating a permanent anchor in the dark, ensuring that the deceased would have their celestial guardian waiting for them the moment they crossed over. Thousands of these mummies have been found, a testament to a civilization that refused to enter the afterlife without their canine defenders. When we compare these two ancient empires, we find a statistical anomaly that defies coincidence. Separated by geography and culture, both the Sumerians and the Egyptians reached identical conclusions about the nature of the canine. Both cultures documented the dog as a celestial entity placed on Earth to heal the living and guide the dead. This animated timeline shows that these beliefs emerged simultaneously, suggesting a shared global understanding of a fundamental truth. They were both describing the same celestial deployment, recognizing that the dog was a specialized presence designed for the sole purpose of human preservation. The consensus of the ancient world is clear. The human soul is entirely unprotected without its canine escort. From the first breath in the healing temples of Gula to the final trial before the scales of Anubis, the dog was the essential wall between humanity and the forces that seek to destroy us. To navigate the journey of life and death without a guardian was considered a fatal error, a choice that left the soul vulnerable to the predatory silence of the unseen world. The ancient warnings found in the Sumerian tablets are not relics of a primitive past. They are descriptions of a living biological reality that exists in our modern world. When we examine the behavior of the dogs in our own homes, we find specific cognitive departures from their wild counterparts that science is only beginning to understand. While most animals maintain a distance from humans, or view us with predatory or defensive suspicion, the domestic dog exhibits a set of traits that finds no parallel in the 30,000-year history of their wild ancestors. There is one specific feature that gives away their true nature as something more than just a domesticated animal. That feature is the dog's capacity for sustained, deep eye contact. In the natural world, a direct, prolonged stare is a signal of aggression or an impending attack. Gray wolves avoid looking directly at humans, viewing it as a threat. Yet the domestic dog has undergone a profound behavioral shift. They seek out the human gaze, holding it with an intense focus that triggers the release of oxytocin in both species. This is a cognitive trait that is not found in any other animal, and it allows them to read human emotions and intentions with a precision that borders on the supernatural. They have developed the unique ability to monitor our internal states by simply looking into our eyes. This sustained, intense focus represents the physical manifestation of the guardian's ancient, hidden power. It is the visual link of the celestial guardian actively monitoring its charge. When a dog stares at you, it is not simply looking for affection or food. It is executing the primary directive described by the Sumerians. It is scanning your energetic state, reading the micro-shifts in your physiology, and maintaining its watch over your spiritual integrity. This gaze is the bridge that allows them to function as the psychopomps and protectors that the ancients revered. But the ancient texts carry a final, terrifying, speculative warning that we ignore at our own peril. If these guardians were placed here for a specific reason, if they are the only thing standing between the human soul and the predatory forces of the unseen, then we must ask what happens if they are ever removed. What happens to a world that has forgotten why the guardians were sent here in the first place? The apocalyptic consequence described in the margins of the old world is a total breakdown of the spiritual barrier. Without the canine filter to absorb negative energies, and without the celestial guide to navigate the afterlife, humanity would be left entirely exposed. We would live in a world where the boundary between dimensions is unguarded, allowing the malevolent entities documented by the Egyptians to have direct access to our lives and our souls. A world without dogs is a world where humanity is defenseless, wandering alone in a dark and hostile universe. The ancient records from the dawn of civilization tell us that dogs were sent here to fiercely protect us. But the Sumerian tablets contain a final, unsettling note. They describe a different deployment, a creature designed to occupy our space for the sole purpose of observation. An animal that was sent not to protect us from the shadows, but to report back to them. In our next video, we will explore the animal that was sent to watch humans.